Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So ends the reading of God's holy word.
Today we continue our series on the Beatitudes of Jesus. And they're called Beatitudes because it's an attitude that we need to be. It's the way Jesus says, if you follow these 8 principles, you will have a very rewarding and fulfilled life. You will be blessed. You will be made happy. It will bring happiness to your life. Jesus began by saying, these 8 principles will fulfill your life. And we are walking through these principles one by one, taking each of the Beatitudes, each of the principles, in a very specific order, the way that Jesus preached them, because the order is also important. And we're applying the Beatitudes to life today, and applying those Beatitudes because we as people have something, or maybe a number of things, that comes between us and God. We don't have that perfect relationship. There's always something that we hide or that we have within ourselves. And these principles, these Beatitudes, are a way for us to get away from that. A way for us to eliminate that from our life so that we can have that close relationship with God. So you're saying to yourself, well, why are we doing a series on the Beatitudes? And if you want to be honest with one another, most of us here today are messed up. We're broken. Raise your hand. How many people are sitting next to somebody that's really messed up? See? We got a bunch of them. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that you and I are very, very good at covering up our pain. We're very good at hiding those wounds from the past. And we cover them up. We don't deal with them. We just kind of put them away. Kind of put them somewhere in our life that sometimes they'll pop up on us at the wrong time because we haven't dealt with them. So we try to hide our pain. We try to hide where we hurt. What we do then, as a result, is develop some nasty habits, some bad habits in our lives. And these habits are our attempt to quiet that pain, our attempt to cover up that pain or whatever hurts us from the past. A lot of times we look at bad habits within ourselves and other people and say, well, that's just a character issue. Can't really do anything about it. It's a character flaw. So as a character flaw, then we're stuck with it. And that is far from the truth. Very far from it. I want to say it's something different than a character flaw or a character weakness. As a matter of fact, when somebody has a bad habit, whether it's you or someone that you're connected to, someone that you're connected somehow, that bad habit is really their hurt, and it's their pain that hasn't been dealt with, and it's just screaming out, I'm hurting. I have this pain. I'm wounded. The habit is a cover-up. The habit is a disguise. What a lot of us do is we skip the hurt and focus on the habit. We think if we've got a bad habit, what we need to do is address the habit. Well, if it's shopping, I'll just quit spending money. But if you haven't dealt with the root cause of the habit, if you haven't dealt with that pain or that wound from the past, you'll just find another habit to take the place of shopping. You'll find another habit to take the place of drinking, for example. So if you don't deal with that root cause of that, the habits will continue. I'll say it again. The habit will never stop screaming until you get to the root of the hurt or the fear. A habit will never stop screaming until you get to the root cause of the habit. What a lot of us simply do is we go, I have to stop shopping so much. Then we try to conquer that habit, but then we just replace it, as I said earlier. But really there's good news today. There's really some fantastic news. And that good news is that you and I have the ability to make some choices in our life that will change who we are, some choices in our life that will transform us. We can make these choices and will not only change us, but it will bring us closer to God. We can have then that working relationship with God that's deeper and more meaningful. Tell me if you want this, that we can heal our hurts and we can experience greater joy, a deeper peace, more enriching relationships with everyone, and a more profound wisdom. Would you like something like that? I know I would, big time. I relate so much to what Paul wrote in Romans, and we've covered it before, but it really makes a lot of sense. And here's what he writes. He says, I don't understand myself at all, for I really want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do the very thing that I hate. When I want to do good, I don't. When I try not to do wrong, I do it anyway. Can any of you relate to that? All the time. That's me. In summary, back in week 1, 2 weeks ago, we talked about reality. We talked about seeing life for what it really is. And as a result of that, we said, and I realize that I'm not God. I'm not in control. I admit that I'm powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing. And my life is unmanageable. That was week 1. It was based on the beatitude of, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. In week 2, or last week, we talked about hope. The hope principle, the second beatitude. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Which led us then to the statement that I earnestly believe that God does exist, that I matter to Him, and that He has the power to help me change. 2 principles we've talked about already. Very good things to learn. However, they don't mean a thing if we were to stop there. If we were to stop there, then we wouldn't get to the root of the problem. So we have to realize that I can be comforted by a God who is crazy about me, regardless of my past, regardless of what I have done in the past. He can transform me into something wonderful and beautiful, and that gives me hope. Here's a summary of these 2 points. Just a quick review. It leaves you feeling pretty good. Basically, I'm not God. I don't have the power to change myself. If I did, I would have. I don't, so I can't. But there's a God who's crazy about me, who loves me, who's wooing me into a deeper, more meaningful relationship, who wants to see me change. And that is very good news. But just 1 and 2, if we ended it right there, doesn't really get us anywhere. It doesn't move us forward away from any kind of hurt. Now the third beatitude that we're talking about today, of the 8, the third one, is something that will give you a more fulfilled life. However, it requires some work on your part. And this is probably one of the most difficult principles to follow, is that third beatitude. It's very important, however, because the rest of the 5 weeks that we're looking at will go nowhere if we don't do this third one. If we don't follow this third principle. That's why it's called the commitment phase, or the commitment principle. We're going to ask you to commit to something. And its statement is to consciously choose to commit all of my life and will over to Christ's care and control. To consciously choose to commit all of my life and will to Christ's care and control. Because blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Remember, Jesus' audience was a very prideful audience. very prideful, spiritually prideful people. You had the Jews, and they had their sights set on a Messiah. They had their sights set on a Messiah that would come to them and deliver them. They were longing that the Messiah would come and restore their rightful place. It's a position of power, and it's the Jewish God-chosen people. So this must have been crazy for them and puzzling for them to hear. They must have thought, wow, this guy is not who we think he is. Blessed are the meek. You can have a full life if you're meek, but they didn't want meekness. They didn't want weakness. They wanted powerful. They wanted macho. They didn't want a meek Jesus Messiah. They wanted Braveheart. They wanted Jesus to paint his face blue and shout, "Freedom!" Take the most powerful empire in the world and deliver the Jewish people from that powerful empire. And they're going to do it with humility. They're going to do it with meekness. Blessed are the meek. I can imagine that every time when Jesus taught, it was usually a very large crowd. And I've got to imagine that there had to be some people in the crowd going, "Pardon me? Did I hear you right?" I do this all the time. Could you say that one more time? I've got to imagine that they're going, maybe I heard him wrong. I don't quite understand this, because they weren't, back then there weren't speaker systems and microphones and the ability to amplify a voice over a large crowd. What did he say? What was that? Blessed are the meek? What? This concept, they didn't understand it in the first century. They didn't have a clue. A lot of us in here don't understand it. And maybe some of us do. Or maybe you do understand what meek means, but it's just something you can't embrace. Because meekness? Weakness? Guys, when you were doing sports in high school, for example, did the coach ever say, all right, you guys, I want you to get in the game. I want you to go after that quarterback and be nice. I want you to get in there and I want you to break through that line, get to that quarterback, and just say that, well, I want to be as nice as a dove. I want to nourish you or nurture you. I doubt very much the coach said that. But if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, meekness is not optional. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, meekness is not optional. In the original language of the Bible, the word for meek was proes, which means different things at different times, at different levels of meaning. On the surface, it can mean mild or humble. If we just say there on the surface, that kind of fits with what a lot of people stereotype meekness as. And they stereotype Christians that way. But there's a deeper meaning that fits this word, and it's the one that I really want to focus on today. In the Greek, the word was often used to describe animals whose natural spirit, wild spirit, had to be tamed by a trainer so that they could become useful. Why did that spirit have to be broken by the trainer? Because they wanted that wild animal to be useful. So you can imagine in your mind a stallion, an incredible horse that can run like the wind. He can pull plows through a dirt field. That's not a picture of weakness. That's not a picture of meekness. But a tame stallion, that's the image that he's representing. And if you're taking notes, that definition is this: meekness is strength under control. That's the tame stallion. Strength under control. Being meek is simply more than just being nice. It's not just this lacking of a conviction. It's actually courage under fire. It's strength. It's conviction, but with a gentle spirit that comes from God's infusion into your life. It doesn't come from your own spirit. The spirit of meekness is actually the spirit of Jesus Christ. Peter says in 1 Peter verse 2, Jesus, who suffered for you, is your example. Follow in his steps. He never sinned. He never deceived anyone. He did not retaliate when he was insulted. When he suffered, he did not threaten to get even. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. Jesus not only said, "Blessed are the weak," or the meek, he modeled it every day in how he lived. He was a living example of meekness. Meekness has always been God's way for humanity. What I want you to get is this. With God, meekness wins every time. It's what separated Moses from everything else. And God said, that's the heart that I want to work for me. Fast forward to the New Testament, and we have Jesus delivering the most important sermon of his ministry. Happy are the meek. Because he's calling us to a different lifestyle. He's calling us to live at a different level, something that we're not at all used to. He's calling us to live in a way that transcends what everyone else seems to settle for or go after. He's calling us to transcend that. This third principle that we're talking about today requires meekness. It requires humility. That's got to be something that's deep within us that drives us. Here's what it's based on. It's based on God's holiness. Meekness means that I acknowledge God's holiness. Me compared to God humbles me because of God's greatness and holiness. Meekness is a confidence in who you are. It's a confidence in who I am. Meekness is a confidence. I know who I am, and I'm loved by God. But there's more to this, even more to this. It's also a confidence in whose I am. It's a confidence in who I am and whose I am. I am a child of the King. I am one of God's children. I am adopted and welcomed into his family because Jesus died for me. You all can say the same thing. I'm one of his. I'm not just a creation of God. There's over 7 billion creations of God today in the world. But I'm actually in a different category, just like you. We are children of God. In 1 John 5, John writes, everyone who believes that Jesus Christ is the Christ is a child of God. I've got a new identity. There's a beautiful side. That's the confidence in who I am. But there's also a wonder aspect or side to this, because it's also whose I am. I am a child of the King. Here's how meekness fits this third principle. If I am not meek, I cannot realize that I'm broken. Living in a broken world. If I don't humble myself, I can't commit all of myself to Christ Jesus. Not a weakness. It's more of a confident humility in who I am and whose I am. Let's take a closer look at this beatitude and what it means. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will inherit the earth. And the phrase to remember is this. It is a commitment. And that commitment is to consciously choose to commit all of my life and will over to the care and control of Jesus Christ. So consciously, we must say, it's my decision. It's a choice that I make. And it's a choice that I make every single day. Next to that, if you're taking notes, write down, I have to do it over and over and over and over again. I've got to choose to commit over and over. 365, 24/7. Choices every day that I have to make. A lot of people sometimes go, I chose God, and I think it was back in maybe January of 97, and they think that's good. They're done. They chose God, so that's all they have to do. They're in. Bad news. That's not the case. This is an over and over 24/7 decision that I've got to make. Do I choose my own agenda, or do I turn it over to God and choose His agenda? When I'm up front like this, like I am this morning, I've got to decide some things as I'm making the presentation. I'm going to choose my agenda while I'm speaking, or am I going to choose God's agenda? I'm triggered by different things that I see. You see, sometimes over there I see some yawning going on. Or somebody over here is talking to somebody else. Or maybe somebody in the back is texting. I've got to make some decisions. In my head, what I want to do is humiliate those people. I want you to stand up on your chair and I'm going, yo, yawner, yo, texter, yo, talker. I want to do that. That's in my head, but I choose not to. I choose to say in my head while I'm up here that I choose to pray for you. That you will be stricken by uncontrollable gas. It's a choice that I must commit to over and over all the time. You've got a friend that's hurting. You've got some free time. You make a choice to go over and help that friend or stay home and do your own agenda. Another example, over and over again you make the choice. You're out walking your dog like Mike does every single morning. Your dog does something on the neighbor's lawn, and you've got that little bag, the dark green bag with you. Mike does all the time, I see it. He bends over. Does he really pick it up? Is he just doing it for show? Let people think he's picking it up? It's a decision that he makes every time Bones goes to the bathroom. It never stops. It's over and over again. My way or God's way. A choice that you make more than you realize. The Bible says this in Romans 6. Don't you realize that whatever you choose to obey becomes your master? You can choose sin, your way, your path, your agenda, but that leads to ultimately to death. Or you can choose to obey God and receive His approval. You've got to make that first choice or that choice over again every day. So I consciously choose to commit to turning my life over to Christ. And here's a biggie. This one's really, really tough because you catch that three-letter word that says all of my life, all of my will. It's not a part-time thing. You're having trouble with finances. You say, well, I'm going to turn my finances over to God, but everything else I'm going to keep on my own. It doesn't work that way. We've talked in the past a lot about complete surrender and how to pray for surrender. It's everything you are. You can start out by giving a little twig to Jesus as part of your tree. Or maybe you give him a leaf. Maybe next time you give him a branch. That's not what he wants. He wants the entire tree. He wants all of your life, all of your will turned over to him. Remember, Jesus is not a bonus. He's not an extra. He's God. It's not about me having more badges for Christ so I can gather and have the willpower within me to change. I can't. I don't. I can't make those changes. If I could, I would. I don't, so I can't. Or I can't, so I don't. Only God can do that after you turn everything over to him. That's the final part. To Christ's care and control. Next to that, I want you to write something down. He loves me very much. That's what Christ's care and control is. He loves me. In week 1, we talked about that he is in control. In week 2, we talked about the fact that he's crazy about you. And he wants more intimate and authentic relationship with you. He wants it all. And the rewards for going down this path with Christ, you know what those rewards are. They are blessings. They are happiness. Blessed are the meek. Happiness, favor, character transformation. You can't take the Cadillac into heaven, but you do take your character. And he can transform that character for you if you just let him. The stallion is tamed. Meekness appears. Happy are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Consciously choose to commit all of my life and will to Christ's care and control. Very simple statement. And so my final question to you guys is, will you? Will you do it? Can you do it? Will you commit all of your life and your will over to Christ's care and control? Will you choose to commit everything to the God who not only created you, but who loves you enough to change you? But to make that commitment, you've got to get rid of the pride, and you must become meek. You have to be humble. Here's what you have to do. You have to humble yourself. You have to drop your pride and say, my way just doesn't work. It never has. If it did, I'd be different right now. So we've proven it over and over and over again. Our own agenda doesn't work. And you have to pack up his love and his grace and his forgiveness and allow it to seep into your life, to be infused into your body, and you will become changed. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to do. It's a huge commitment. Will you do it? I certainly hope so. Amen.